Hello, everybody,
Hello.
and welcome to the podcast. We are back, and it's been a week since you heard from us. It's been a long time since we've recorded.
Yep.
But you don't need to know that.
Yep. To you, it's just been a week.
Today, we are finishing up our second series on this podcast. But this is because we've been doing the MCU, but that series we're not even close to being finished with. So this is the first series that we've actually started and finished. And that is Mad Max. And we're going to the final movie, which is Mad Max Fury Road. Now, should I just jump in?
Would you like to go first on production and things?
Yeah, I'll go first. There's a lot here, but jump in as you see fit.
Okay.
We're just jumping right in to this crazy movie. This comes out May 15th, 2015, so it's almost 4 years. By the time this comes out, it'll be 4 years old. Wow, that's like tomorrow, or 2 days from now. It's kind of weird. When we were watching the movie, I thought the movie was like 5 or 6 years old, maybe even 7.
But it's not that old.
Yeah, I remember watching it in high school, but I didn't.
We did not watch it in high school.
Yeah, it wasn't out yet. But that's how I associate it with like my senior year for some reason. So that was a little confusing.
No, that's Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah.
That's a Tom Hardy.
Old.
Yeah, which is yeah. So how long has it been since Thunderdome?
I would have to see. Thunderdome came out in the 90s. But yeah, Dark Knight. So I kind of thought that this movie was around the same time as Dark Knight for some reason. Like I thought that these roles were closer together than they were.
It's crazy to think that Dark Knight Rises is so old now.
Oh, so 1985 was Thunderdome. So this comes out 30 years later?
Yeah.
95, 2005, 15?
Yeah.
Whoa. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So this is directed by George Miller, as all the movies are. Thunderdome, of course, directed by 2 people. Can't remember the other guy's name off the top of my head.
Sorry, other guy. But it's really George Miller's thing.
And it's produced by Doug Mitchell, George Miller, and P.J. Voeten. It is written by George Miller and Brendan McCarthy, who is a comic book artist.
Oh, that's cool.
Which makes a lot of sense when you watch this movie.
And I don't know if you saw, but you might even be about to say it, but this movie was storyboarded before there was even a script. And there were like 3,500 panels of pictures.
Which would make sense why you would hire a comic book artist to help write it.
That just makes more sense to me, because I didn't know that about the comic book artist thing.
Uh-huh.
But that makes sense. And they had like 7 artists.
That's crazy. So
they Who's doing the production notes this time?
So they had the whole movie storyboarded before they even
storyboarded, yeah.
Storyboarded.
Yeah.
No boats in this movie.
No.
And then the third writer was Nico Lethauris. And this guy is pretty cool because you will remember in Mad Max 1, there is a mechanic that Mad Max goes to.
It's that guy?
And it's that guy.
Oh.
And I'll explain a little more for the listener in case you forgot. But he goes to this mechanic with his family, and then that's when his family...
Well, the wife goes first.
Yeah, and that's when his wife and child first encounter Toe Cutter.
Yes.
The main bad guy in Mad Max 1. So that writer, or that guy, helped write this movie.
That's pretty cool.
And then we have music by Junkie XL.
So you're getting into that, not me?
Well, you jump in.
I don't have much on him, actually. I was looking through his career as a composer, like composing credits. Most of them are just like writing credits, not necessarily the composer.
Because he has an artist, like a...
Dang it.
He's a DJ, is that right?
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know about that. I didn't look that far into it. But the only other, like, he's composed some movies, but the only ones that I know that he's composed is this Mad Max and Alita Battle Angel.
Oh, I have more here because he did the.
A lot of the. I was just gonna say one more thing. I don't know what the song is. Maybe you do. And I didn't look it up. I know that's a bad job on my part. But he's credited in several movies for the song a little less conversation.
Well, there's an Elvis song. Little less conversation, a little more action.
Yeah, but
please.
he's just credited with that song, and like.
I wonder if he did the remix of that song that's really famous.
Yeah, I'm gonna say yeah.
Yeah, we'll confirm that. You heard it here first.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he also did the soundtrack for Black Mass. He did Batman vs. Superman with Hans Zimmer. He did Deadpool, and he did The Dark Tower. And I have written here, he's a Dutch DJ.
What was the first one?
Black Mass.
How come I don't see that when I'm looking at it?
I mean, that's what I found. I don't know. Let me see. We're gonna confirm live on the air years before. I mean, months before we talked about it. Composer. Let's see.
Well, don't look up
Dark
him.
Tower.
Look up Black Mass.
Yeah. It's so he has another name he goes by, which is Tom Holkenborg.
Oh,
So
that's why he goes by Junkie XL, probably.
Yeah.
It's kind of an unfortunate last name. But
Yeah,
the
so-
soundtrack of this movie was so good that when I found out he was a composer for Alita Battle Angel, I was like, okay.
Yeah, maybe I need to see
Maybe
that
I need to watch this
kind of
movie
thing.
because the soundtrack was so good.
I was shocked that this wasn't nominated for best score, but then when you see who won, which is Ennio Morricone, I don't remember how to pronounce the name exactly, the guy who scored The Hateful Eight and came out of retirement to score The Hateful Eight.
Yeah.
And that movie has an incredible score,
Yeah.
so I'm okay with that. I'm surprised he didn't get a nomination at least, because this score is unbelievable.
Yes, it's so good. It does exactly what it needs to do, and it signals emotions
Yeah.
throughout the movie. It shows foreshadowing, or it calls back to an earlier part of the movie. He did his job.
Well, let's just talk about the score, then go back to back to notes, because I want to get into. To me, he does like three very distinct things in this movie that really make it interesting. So one, he has like the Mad Max, or like I wouldn't even say it's his theme, but it's like the theme of chaos, which
Those
is just
drums?
those. No, it's it's that low cello going dun,
Oh,
dun.
yeah. Yeah.
And wherever you're at in the movie, when that happens, it just rips you into that moment so hard. And then he's got the guitar player and drummer.
Yes.
So, I mean, in this movie, there is a guitar player who shoots flames out of his guitar that plays, and he is like...
He is strapped to one of the cars. He is strapped by suspension cords. And this isn't an effect. This happened. This guy was strapped by suspension cords in front of a wall of speakers that was on top of a car, and the car was driving throughout the movie at top speed with all the other cars. As this guitar player is playing the guitar, and to release flames from the top of the guitar, he would use the whammy bar. The guitar weighed 135 pounds, and the musician is this Australian musician named Iota, who's like a singer-songwriter. He kind of looked, I don't think it's like as dark, but he looks like a Marilyn Manson type, like with what he looks like his get up kind of stuff. I'm assuming that's not his kind of music though. That being said, I didn't listen to it. He kind of looks like Taiki.
Waikiki?
Yeah, kind of. Anyway, that's not important. The important part is he's carrying a 135-pound guitar strapped to a car while he's strapped to a car playing guitar.
Yeah.
Throughout the movie.
Yeah. That's so cool. And 135 pounds. That's crazy. What I love about the movie using that instrumentation is like the movies have always been kind of this, like, there's this punk like energy to them, and using a guitar is like the ultimate sign of that. But it also is this cool harbinger throughout the movie where when they're far away or it's doing like a landscape shot, you hear the guitar go in and out of what's happening, so that it becomes this impending doom that's chasing Furiosa and Mad Max.
It makes that part of the soundtrack a character in the story.
Yeah, and that's a really cool use of it.
But then, like, the part when Charlize Theron like collapses on the sand because she realizes like her people are basically gone, which is like the reason why they all left.
Yeah,
that part of the score was like so emotional.
Really? Yeah, I got like goosebumps.
Goosebumps.
I got goosebumps watching that.
Yeah.
And then there's that other scene in the movie. So it's like you have this intense cello, like signifying the chaos and the madness of all of it. And then you have this guitar that's like, and these wild drums that are like, the bad guys are coming, the bad guys are coming. And then you have this moment, and the first time I really noticed it is when they first go into that storm. The score changes into this kind of beautifully composed, like nice to listen to music while chaos is going on. So you're kind of seeing like the beauty in all the chaos. And same with the Charlize Theron moment. It's like there's like humanity in all the chaos.
Yeah. That kind of reminds
cool.
me. Did you look into cinematographer stuff?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Then go ahead.
Yeah, that's actually my next note. What a transition.
Yeah.
Segue.
Both.
Well, yeah. So this is cinematographer John Seal, and he came out of retirement to shoot this movie. So
Thank you, Mr. Seal.
Yeah, this is Prince of Persia, Spanglish, Dreamcatcher.
What?
The English Patient.
What?
And
Dreamcatcher?
Yeah. And your favorite, not your favorite, but one of your favorites, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. He shot that movie. So
what a career.
He kind of has like a imaginative almost. Like all these movies have like a fantastical element to them.
Super imaginative.
I mean, I haven't seen that movie.
I'm just kidding. Me neither.
Even English Patient has like a fantastical element to it.
Oh, really?
No, I mean, it's like supposed to be a realistic story, but it's this very romantic story. So it has the fantasy of romance, I guess. So he has an interesting style there. Production companies, we are back at Warner Brothers. Not back. I think that's the first time. And they distributed the movie along with Village Roadshow Pictures. And then we got Kennedy Miller Mitchell and then Rat Pack Dune Entertainment. Those are the producers. Box office. So the production budget of this movie, $150 million.
Mm-hmm.
Domestic, we got it makes $154,058,340, and worldwide it makes $378,858,340. So it's a hit. It's not like a massive hit though.
Yeah.
So then going on to the themes, the theme of the movie is survival, keeping humanity in a feral world. And then, of course, there's a huge element of feminism in this movie, which I think we'll get into more as we discuss the plot points.
Yeah.
Interesting to be 30 years away from the Mad Max movie, and he comes back. George Miller makes a Mad Max movie that's really about this character we've never met, Furiosa, and Mad Max is kind of sidelined the whole movie. But he's also sidelined in such a way that if you love Mad Max, you're not disappointed.
No.
Like, it actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It just seems like it's one of those classic examples of, like, it sounds like George Miller had an idea, and that's what the story told him to do.
Yeah.
And he went where the story took him, instead of forcing Mad Max to carry the burden of the movie.
Yeah. And to kind of compare going back to the cinematographer thing a little bit, like, also just comparing world building to the other movies and just how this has further progressed the world building. But I read that one of the things that George Miller asked of the cinematographer was to make it as colorful as possible.
Okay.
Because he wanted it to look different than most post-apocalyptic films, which are usually very like desaturated, drabby, dark, bleak.
Yeah.
He wanted the opposite of that because to show that people are trying to make the most of it and trying to find beauty in all of the trash that's left.
Which is exactly the theme. The finding humanity in a feral world.
Yeah. And I think that's a very optimistic view of it, which is just so, it's just so interesting. And I think you could argue that for like all of the movies.
Yeah. Although it is kind of interesting because it almost seems like the first two are kind of more like, don't have that optimism to them. and then the last two do.
I think, but you see that in the costumes.
Yeah.
At least for the second one. Because there's some dumb costumes. But it's like...
I mean the theme, like the bleakness. It seems like the first two are much more like ending on like, and then he made it through, and he lives on. I guess there's I guess there is hope in all of them.
But like, of course there's still like a little bit of a downer. Because...
they're violent movies.
Because they're violent movies, and it's a post-apocalyptic world, and they have to kill each other. Like, that's just always going to be a downer.
Right.
But it is still pretty positive, I would say. Even though a lot of people have died by the end of the movie.
Yeah.
Fight you on that.
No, you're right. You're right.
And so then I'll go into a little bit of actors stuff.
Okay.
So you have Tom Hardy, who plays Mad Max.
Well, actually, can I... Because this plays into this a little bit, I have to hit a couple notes.
Of Tom Hardy?
No. It'll make sense in a second. So, because the movie was in production for so long.
Yeah.
So, Miller got the idea for
since
this movie.
like the early 2000s.
Well, yeah, he got the original idea for the movie in 1998. And the movie was in development hell for a very long time. And so there's this Variety article that was in 2002. Talking about how Miller got the rights to Mad Max franchise back from Warner Brothers as part of a settlement with the studio in 1997. Warner's, which released both The Road Warrior in 81 and Beyond Thunderdome in 85, gave him the rights after Miller, who directed and co-written all three movies, agreed to detach himself from Warner Brothers. I don't really know what that looks like or what that means.
Okay.
Jodie Foster, agreed to detach himself from Warner Brothers. Jodie Foster, star of Contact, and allow Robert Zemeckis to helm. I think I missed
that
something.
Makes no sense what you wrote.
It doesn't.
Was she supposed to be in the next one? Is that what you're saying?
I think so.
Okay.
I took these notes a while ago.
I know.
But I think it looks like Robert Zemeckis was supposed to make the movie. That's Forrest Gump.
Okay.
He made something recently. I think he made Welcome to Marsden or whatever. Oh, really weird fit. Would have been awful. And all the thing was Mel Gibson gonna be back. He was gonna be in the movie. And it was set to shoot in 2001, and then September 11th happened. The American dollar collapsed against the Australian dollar.
Oh.
And that's from the New York Post. I had to cite...
Well, then I read in the trivia further, like, in a little bit after that, Mel Gibson got involved in Passion of the Christ.
Oh, okay.
Which I assume that consumed years of his life. So, like, very unavailable for a while once that happened, too.
Okay. But yeah, I'm citing, like, that was from the New York Post. I'm citing these because I just lifted a lot of the stuff directly from things, from websites, because it's hard to paraphrase it in a different way. And then, so it was going to star Mel Gibson, who at the time was 59, but then he was busted for drunk driving, called a police officer, quote, sugar tits, was embroiled in an ugly battle with his girlfriend, made anti-Semitic comments.
Wait, why do we need to get into this?
Well, because there's a quote about it.
Okay.
I think it's interesting, and was secretly recorded ranting insanely at a screenwriter. And then this is a quote from George Miller. By the time we got there, not only had Mel hit all the turbulence in his life, but this is not a Mad Max in which he's an old warrior, the director says. He's meant to be that same contemporary warrior. I guess in the same way that James Bond has been played by various people, it was time to hand over the mantle. So all of that to say, it sounded like he was interested in doing it with Mel Gibson, and then with the Passion of the Christ,
all this stuff happened.
All of this other crazy stuff. It's like he goes. I'm imagining maybe he had the idea to get a new actor, and then it's confirmed, and he's like, "We need a new actor."
Yeah, I also read that Mel gave Tom Hardy his blessing, and whenever I read that stuff, though, I'm like, did they really go to lunch and talk about it? I don't know.
Yeah,
but it's like, okay.
It's kind of
I think Tom Hardy would have gotten it either way because it's not his character, but
it's kind of like I remember Alden Ehrenreich talked about how he had lunch with Harrison Ford to play Han Solo,
right? And it's like, okay.
I think Han Solo. I think Harrison Ford told him something like, "Don't let him sign you to too many contracts" or something like that, because he's Harrison
That's
Ford.
That's like his
and he
advice.
Hates Star Wars.
Yeah,
he's like not gonna help him with the character, I'm sure.
Well, I heard that he actually did do some.
Oh, did he?
On the movie, but
It's just one of those things.
But yeah, it's
you're
like,
okay.
Did they go to lunch? Were they forced to go to lunch? Were they paid to go to lunch? Like,
yeah.
What is lunch?
What is lunch?
Okay, I'm gonna get into Tom Hardy.
Yes,
you can't stop me.
I don't want to stop you.
So I don't know. He's been really working since like 2000 on and has not been stopping.
He's got such a great career.
I just kind of picked highlights.
Okay.
And as I name movies and years, just know that there are several movies within these years, or several movies within these years that I'm also just not mentioning because he's just in so much. A lot of it's like stuff to just build his career, and that we'll never remember that he's in this movie, and we've never seen it.
Okay.
A lot of like British TV stuff, that kind of thing. But he's in Star Trek Nemesis in 2002.
Almost quits acting afterward.
Why?
Because it did so poorly, and everybody hated the movie.
Oh. And then he's in this movie in 2004 with Daniel Craig called Layer Cake that actually sounded kind of interesting. Have you seen it?
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
It's not
plot.
amazing, but it's pretty good.
Yeah. For the listeners, in case you're interested in watching it, because Daniel Craig is awesome.
Yeah.
He is a cocaine dealer, very successful, and as right before he's going to retire, his boss gives him an insane job to do. Sounds great. Yeah. I want to watch it. And then he's in Marie Antoinette in 2006. I don't remember who the character is. I've never seen the movie. I just know like so many people are in that movie.
Yeah, okay. That's the Kirsten Dunst movie?
Yeah. So I assume...
Never seen it.
I just feel like that movie, it's one of those... Anyway, so many people are in that movie. It's like, I'm sure that a lot of actors were able to use this as a resume builder. Because from what I've seen of the movie, it's very stylized and like kind of funny.
Okay.
And then 2008 is Bronson, which is his, probably a breakout for sure.
Yeah, that's a great movie.
One of his best movies.
For a really dark biopic, that's the one to watch.
Yeah, like really dark, and it's what's that guy's name? Nicholas Winding
Refn.
Sorry, I keep burping, people. And then after Bronson, a couple years later, you have Inception in 2010, which just furthers his career because it's like, oh, he's working with another really great, prolific director.
That movie kind of puts him on the public's map.
Yeah, at that point in my Tom Hardy history, I like really liked him in that movie, but of course, I was more interested in Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yeah.
But upon realizing, like, once I realized who Tom Hardy was, I could go back and I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy is so good.
Dude,
like
they've kind of had like a split since that movie where like Joseph Gordon-Levitt kept doing worse and worse movies and he kept doing better and better movies.
Yeah. Pretty interesting.
Yeah.
And then in 2011 is Warrior, which I remember being a pretty good movie about boxing, martial arts, or
I think.
MMA. And then Dark Knight Rises is 2012.
And now he's like arrived. Yeah. Everybody knows Tom Hardy. Everybody's talking about Tom Hardy.
And then like, I was going to look up. But then Dark Knight Rises 2012. And then I didn't really like write anything after that because it's like, then he did Mad Max and that's just further like exploded his career. Mm-hmm. But I wanted to also just like read to you what. Oh yeah, I didn't write it down because there were so many big movies he was in. So Dark Knight Rises 2012. Also in 2012, Lawless and This Means War.
Oh yeah.
And then 2013 he does Locke, which everyone needs to see Locke.
It's a great movie.
It's just a movie of him driving a car, and it's only him driving a car for like an hour and a half. And I know that sounds boring, but it is one of the most intense movies.
Yeah,
and it's not an action movie.
He's dealing with some like family stuff, and so he's on the phone with all these different people.
And then 2014, The Drop, which is such a good movie.
Yeah,
another great acting movie. He's just so good. And then it's Mad Max.
Wow. He's just had like a steady climb.
Yeah, and then, following right after that's Legend, Revenant, Child 44. That's a boring one. But then like Dunkirk, and then a really boring TV show, Taboo, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, we only watched 1 or 2 episodes.
I watched a couple.
Oh, you did? Okay.
And then the movie, the show looks very good.
Yeah.
I'll say that.
Yeah.
Story wasn't even that boring, but it was. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then...
I mean, I didn't finish it, but...
And then you have Charlize Theron, who has been around since like 1995.
Yeah, Mighty Joe Young.
She's the same pretty much as Tom Hardy. It's like, I'm only going to read highlights, but between all these highlights are so many movies that she's in. But like, she's in That Thing You Do, which I didn't know that.
The Tom Hanks movie?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And then she's in The Devil's Advocate, which is a Keanu Reeves Al Pacino movie.
Oh, yeah.
And then she is the astronaut's wife.
What is that?
Oh, have you not heard of that movie?
No.
It's with Johnny Depp,
Oh, okay.
but she's the
The
astronaut's
astronaut's
wife.
got a wife.
Yeah, and it's her. And then Monster comes out in 2003, which wins her the Oscar.
Yeah, that's like now she's arrived.
Yes, and that's kind of like, oh, she went ugly for the role.
Yeah.
That's Monster. Same year Italian Job.
Yeah, that's what puts her on the map in my head because I
Yeah,
see Italian
me
Job
too.
and I'm like, she's cool.
And then she's in Hancock, which I don't remember.
Yeah, she's Jason Bateman's wife, I think.
Okay. I forgot Jason Bateman was in that movie.
Yeah.
And then she's in The Road, which I also just don't remember.
Oh, yeah, she's Viggo Mortensen's wife.
Oh, is that her?
Yeah, just in the
Okay.
flashbacks, though.
Yeah.
She's only in like 10 minutes of the movie.
Talk about being depressed for 2 hours.
And post-apocalyptic.
Read the book. You'll be depressed for a couple weeks. And then she's in Young Adult, which is one of Micah's favorite movies.
Ugh,
And then
don't like that movie.
in 2012, she's in Prometheus and Snow White and the Huntsman.
Okay.
And then it's like Mad Max.
Yeah.
And then,
And she
I
is
really like her in Prometheus. I thought she was
Good
a great
in
job.
Mad Max.
Yes. So then you have Nicholas Hoult. This is my last one.
Okay.
I didn't go into all of the wives, like all of those girls,
Mm-hmm.
because most of them I looked into, like the one of them's in like Big Little Lies. Most of the other ones are models,
Okay.
like Victoria's Secret models
okay.
or Australian models. So I didn't really go too far into like
Australian
their stuff.
Victoria's Secret models.
then you have Nicholas Hoult, who did some child acting things. He's like only 30.
Uh-huh.
And if Sydney Willie ever listens to this podcast, I hope she chuckles when I say his breakout thing is Skins, which is true. But I just always remember like, oh, Nicholas Hoult is so good. And she's like, oh, he's in Skins. She just always had to remind me. It's like a pretty graphic
Oh, yeah.
teenage British. I think it's a British show and then there was an American show.
Okay.
So like that's his breakout. Is
Okay.
this like pretty graphic sexual teenage TV show? And I'm like, oh, okay. And then he's in Clash of the Titans, which I don't remember,
Never saw that
but I just
movie.
don't remember the movie. And then X-Men, he begins his X-Men journey in 2011.
He's the Beast, right?
Yes.
Oh, my gosh.
And then in
That's
2000
going to be such a pain when we have to watch those movies.
Yeah, we'll put that off as long as we can. But then in 2013, he's in Warm Bodies, a movie that is warm to my heart.
Yeah.
But it's just kind of okay. But it's good. I like it.
Yeah. Well, and you should jump on who is who else is in the movie? There's someone else.
Yeah, so we said on episode 1.
Have I been popping this whole time?
No.
Have I? I forgot to put the pop filter on. Keep talking. I'm gonna grab the pop filter.
So in Mad Max 1, when we started that, we said there were big things that we were going to reveal in this one upon a realization we made as we were doing some research for this series. So you have Toe Cutter, who is the main bad guy in Mad Max. And then who to be the best, or not the best, the main bad guy, a Morton Joe as Hugh Keys Byrne. I think that's
Is
how you
that the
say it.
actor name?
Yeah, who was Toe Cutter. So same actor playing the main bad guy. And let me tell you, he does a wonderful job.
Yeah, I think that's so cool how it's the main bad guy from Mad Max 1, who's one of the highlights of that movie, is the main bad guy in this movie, and he is so good. He's so gross in this movie.
Yeah.
The
So-
character design of him is unbelievable.
Well, I'll kind of get into that because, like, the character design for, like, just about everyone's so interesting. And one of the most interesting character designs about that a lot of the characters have in common is people are just, like, riddled with tumors.
Mm-hmm.
And in the beginning of the movie, when it starts, there's, like, voiceovers, radios, like, radio clips. And then
Yeah.
Tom Hardy's talking a little bit, and you kind of infer that there was, like, a nuclear war.
Yeah, they mentioned there's an oil war, and then there was a water war.
Yeah. So then there's like insinuated like a nuclear thing as well. So there's just radioactivity,
Yeah.
like leftovers.
Which, remember in Thunderdome, he uses the Geiger counter to check the water.
That's right. And
so it's like,
radioactive.
I'd imagine that it happened before, probably even before Road Warrior.
Yeah. So if this is, in the air or just in everything for a while, people will be born with many birth defects. So that's how you get the war boys, who are the white pasty.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's hundreds of them in this movie. And most of you're just kind of like, did they paint themselves white? Why are they white? And they're also.
I always assume they painted.
Yeah. Well, I didn't think. Well, yeah. So like, they. What was I saying though? Oh yeah, they're also considered having a half-life, and that's because they only live like half of a life. Because most of them, like, they're born with birth defects caused by all the nuclear stuff, and a lot of them have tumors. Nicholas Hoult is one of these characters. He's a war boy.
Yeah.
And they have to have blood transfusions. And I always thought that was just so interesting visually.
Yeah.
That they're so like Tom Hardy gets captured and he is like they call him a blood bag. So he's Nicholas Holt's blood bag.
It's so cool. All of this is so cool.
And then like when they capture him, they're tattooing stuff on his back, and it's kind of quick and you can't really read it, but it's all of his like his blood type. It's just like a stats of him biologically.
Universal donor and universal blood type, which is important to know because when he transfuses with Charlize at the end, that's why he doesn't even question anything. He knows he can do it because he's a universal donor.
Right. So
pretty cool.
He's Nicholas Holt's blood bag, and you're thinking like, this is just so interesting. I haven't like the first time I saw it, I didn't really question why.
Yeah.
But upon rewatches, I'm like, okay, so why are these like, are they blood bags for other human beings? So then looked it up, and
it says he's high octane, right?
High octane.
What was that?
I don't remember. Well, oh yeah. So like what I had researched and read was like, so these people or these war boys who have like, they what am I trying to say? They're born with all these birth defects because of nuclear radioactivity.
Mm-hmm.
So you would assume like that most of them have cancer.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times blood transfusions are performed because of leukemia.
Okay.
So it's kind of like you could probably assume that, especially with all the tumors on them, like they at least most of them have leukemia. And then there's like little boys too, and you're just gonna like you're probably assuming like they already have cancer or they will have cancer.
Yeah.
And they have a blood deficiency,
which is why they're so white.
Right. So then also another theory, or I think not another theory, but along with that is like introducing blood into them gives them energy. So that's why it's like he's tattooed on his back high octane energy, which would mean like, oh, that means Nicholas Holt's gonna have high octane energy because
that's so
he
cool.
has
That's
his blood.
so interesting.
Yeah.
Well, and as we're talking about this series, I mean the one thing that we've hit really hard is the world building element of the series.
Yeah.
And this movie like perfectly hits that note where I really think you could watch this movie. So first of all, you could watch this movie and not watch any of the other ones and you'd be fine. Mm-hmm. But you could watch this movie and you could not care about like how the world works that much and you'd be fine. But if you want to, you can like dig into a lot. Like you can go to the bar after the movie with your friends and talk about like what you think happened before the movie, what you think happened afterward. How come this character was there? And the thing I kept saying, like every time a character showed up on screen, I was like, this world is so fleshed out. They're not bogging us down by just like explaining everything. There's almost no explanation.
Well, it's because
it's a
post-apocalyptic, so there's just like no rules anymore.
Yeah.
So you don't need to remember anything.
Yeah, but all this stuff like these blood bags and stuff, there's just enough dialogue that you get it, but you don't have to like spend your time like, oh yeah, so the blood bag does this. Oh yeah, so later in the movie, which isn't necessarily bad, but for this franchise, it would bog it down.
Oh yeah.
But all these characters are so fleshed out and so interesting that like, if I'm not saying I would want this, but if he was like, we're making an Immortan Joe movie, I'd be like, cool. We're making his like that little guy sidekick who's has all those little war boys that are with him. It's like I'm making a spin-off movie with him. I'd be like, awesome.
Well,
it's like they're all interesting characters.
To go to the Tina Turner character in Thunderdome, I mean, she kind of explains it only in a couple lines. Her and most other people, it's like, because of this post-apocalyptic world, I am now given the chance to have to do something. And it's like, cool, you don't need to tell me anything else about your backstory. Like, that's it.
And if you use a counterexample of the Mummy, the Tom Cruise movie, you remember there's that section where the movie just stops cold in its tracks, and Russell Crowe just starts going on and on about these monsters and how they find them and how they're gonna like help the world with them, and you just kind of shut off. And it's like all of that could have been done in such a way or parsed out information that by the end of the movie we knew what was happening, but you didn't have to like sit down like a conference because it's boring.
Oh yeah, it's
and
so
this
boring.
movie,
There's
all
also
of
some
the world
other
building,
issues with that, but yeah,
this movie, it's just the world building is so interesting, and everything you see, you're like, oh, that's cool. You know, it's all.
Yeah, so to further
it's
on
amazing.
the world building too is which kind of like is the catalyst for the story is like. So Charlize Theron, she drives the war rig. She has earned that title to drive the war rig, which means she goes to Gas Town to get gas and brings it back, and to so that they can like continue to work. This civilization can continue to work and hopefully survive.
Yeah,
wouldn't really consider that anyone's thriving at this point. Not even Immortan Joe, because he has cancer too. You can tell because his body is disgusting. And then there are women who just breastfeed all the time. And so like mother's milk is like a precious... I mean, I'm assuming because it's just got vitamins that they don't have anymore. So people drink mother's milk. And then there are even further than that. Immortan Joe has like...
This movie's so cool.
He has like... How many are there? Like 5 or 6 girls? Those are like 5 or 6
I think
girls.
there were 4 or 5.
4 or 5. So those are his wives, and they're meant to be impregnated by him.
And they don't seem to be affected by the radiation.
No, but they're also like sealed in a vault.
Yeah.
So like I'm assuming they were selected since birth.
Yeah.
And they were locked away in a vault to be cared for, and you see pretty like the vault is very like lavish. They have their own little water pool when everyone outside only gets like maybe a drop of water a day. And
I didn't notice the water pool. Yeah, you're right.
And if you notice in that room, there were tons of books in that room.
Yeah.
That's the only time we see books in this entire series.
Oh, interesting.
Is in that room. And then they have beds, and it just looks very comfortable. And they have like that woman's like a doctor. They even have like a doctor.
Yeah.
So like they're given conceivably a very comfortable lifestyle. Of course, they are prisoners.
Yeah.
And abused.
And we can assume they're being raped.
Yeah. They don't. Yeah, definitely. So Charlize Theron, she is like tasked with like, okay, she's going to drive to Oil Town or Oil City or something. Gas Town.
That's what it was called.
To receive gas. And pretty early on in their course, and she's got like troops of other cars with her, she drives off the path.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like the beginning.
Yeah, but even before that, a couple things that we haven't discussed that I want to hit. There's a 2-headed lizard at the beginning.
Uh-huh.
That's cool. I'm in the movie. That's all I want to say about that.
You're in the movie? Oh, like
when I see the movie and there's a 2-headed lizard, cool. That's enough for me.
Because of, nuclear stuff.
Yeah, it's cool. The first action sequence is when they're chasing Mad Max. He throws the spear, and it rolls for a long time. And right off the bat, you're like, this is already crazier than all the other movies.
What rolls for a long time?
His car. Mad Max's car.
Oh, you called it a spear.
Oh, the guy throws a spear, it blows up, and his car rolls.
Okay.
It's so hard to describe action, because you think you say words that you never said, because you're just seeing what you said. And so that's when they capture Max. And he says this line, which is really great, where he says, "A man reduced to a single instinct survive."
Yeah.
Interesting. Cool. There's some weird like high frame fast forwarding stuff that's going on. That I remember the first time I saw it, I was like, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
But it has a very interesting, jarring...
The flashbacks to the kid being hit by the car is very odd, too.
Yeah.
Like, not my favorite, but it's also very
kinda
visual.
Cool.
Yeah.
I think now that I know it's in the movie and I've seen it a couple times, it actually works for me now.
Yeah. So, like, he has these, like, PTSD flashbacks to people, like, talking to him.
Uh-huh.
And one of them's this child that keeps popping up throughout the movie who's like, where were you? Why weren't you there? Like, help me.
Yeah.
And we don't, like, if you'd seen the other movies, you're like, who is this kid and when did this happen? You can just assume this happened between Thunderdome and this movie.
And see, again, back to my whole read on this movie, he's a folklore character that just traverses the Australian wasteland, and he is just like gathering. He is helping people, but he's always like motivated just to survive. That's his only motivation at this point, since his family is dead. But you can see in this movie how it's affecting him. But now he is in some ways reincarnated because it's a different actor.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say reincarnated, but I think he's like this kind of weird immortal character.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. That's what I was going to say about that. This is the first one that they didn't shoot in Australia, by the way.
Yes, in Africa.
Because there was a large rainfall, and Australia was too green, so they had to film it in Namibia.
The desert.
Namibia. Yeah, and he wanted to make a movie that they could read in Japan and still have a full visceral experience. Like you could not know the language and watch the movie. He used Japan as an example.
Oh, interesting.
I know we were jumping into the plot, but I still had a few more interesting things. 120-day shoot, and then his wife, George Miller's wife, edited the movie because he thought that she could provide an interesting... What did you say?
Well, the quote that I read was, he said, if a man edits this movie, it'll just be like every other action movie.
Yeah.
And his wife has edited Happy Feet and Babe, the movie about the pig.
Yeah, which are both George Miller movies.
Oh, yeah. But, like, those very different movies.
Yeah. It's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't look like any other action movie, not even the Mad Max movies in its editing. And she had to parse through 480 hours of footage.
Took her 3 months to watch it.
Yep. The film contains 2,700 cuts, which is equivalent to 22.5 cuts per minute. If you compare it to Road Warrior, 1,200 cuts of the 90 minutes, that's 13.33 cuts per minute.
Something I also noticed, I think it was the cinematographer or the camera person, I don't know. It was something George Miller stressed was to keep, like, I'm assuming Tom Hardy and or Charlize in the center of the frame.
Yep.
Because it was so action heavy, it would be really easy to cut them out by accident.
Or just keep focus of shot centered to avoid confusion with audience.
Right. And that also would make her job easier to edit. Because there's going to be cut people no matter what. But you got to make sure they're in it.
Yeah. But I think even just like in general, that was just kind of a rule on set for the most part.
And then just also, if you've never seen this movie, and I know we were freaking about the other ones, and they're worth to freak out about because they're practical and they're real, and you just don't see that anymore as much as you should. This movie, at least 80% of the movie is practical effects. The only times there's like special effects or CG, like a big CGI thing, is just Charlize Theron's arm. Because she's
or
missing
the
half
storm,
of it. Or the storm, like.
But all of that is stuff that it's like it's like an artistic move, not a like all of the action sequences.
Thing.
Yeah, it's all artistic or maybe a safety concern.
Yeah,
that's like the only reason they use CGI in the movie.
We weren't joking when we said a guy was strapped with a guitar to a car. If they didn't CGI that, they're probably not going to CGI the other stuff. Yeah. Because that's just ridiculous.
And it's such a beautiful looking movie.
Yeah.
But last night we were talking about the frame rate.
Yeah.
So most movies are shot at 24. So something like 50 to 60% of the film is not at 24 frames a second, said Seal, that's the cinematographer. It'll be running below 24 frames because George, if he couldn't understand what was happening in the shot, he slowed it down until you could. Oh. Or if it was too well understood, he'd shorten it and he'd speed it up back towards 24. His manipulation of every shot in that movie is intense.
Oh.
And I was right. The night scenes were shot in the day and manipulated later.
Oh, cool. I also read that, which all this frame rate stuff, it just all makes so much sense. I was reading that.
Once you start getting into frame rate, it's crazy.
Yeah. Apparently Tom Hardy was a big pill during production.
Really?
He was just like, he was... Yeah, he was pretty contradictory in a lot of things. And Charlize even said that, like, there were times where she had to ask George Miller, what are you doing? Because she couldn't understand what he was directing her. And a lot of it's just because it's action things. So he's, like, telling her to do something. She's like, but that doesn't make sense. But he might be telling her something for safety reasons. But it's like, but that's not going to accomplish this. And apparently Tom Hardy was, like, very difficult to work with.
Interesting.
Until I read that, like, their Cannes premiere, he apologized to George Miller because he saw the movie. And he was like, you knew what you were doing the whole time. He was mad because he didn't think he knew what he was doing. But
well, and Max has got to be a little mad.
Well, yeah. And so then he sees the movie and he's like, Of course I mean, why, it's like, sorry that I didn't think you were doing your job.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
Oh man. Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, there's a bunch of other things, but
we got to talk about the story, Micah.
We do need to talk about the story.
So I'm just going to jump back into it. So Charlize Theron, like we said earlier, drives off the main road to Gastown, and all of the crew, other people in the cars, all the other war boys are like really confused. But she's the boss because she is driving the war rig. So they're like, where are we going? And all she says is, we're heading east. And that's kind of good enough. Like, it buys her time for what's going to happen, which we still don't know why she's driving off course yet. Mm-hmm. But Immortan Joe, big bad guy, he sees where they're going, what they're doing. And then it's just like he knew. Like, this isn't right. Something's wrong. He goes to the vault to check on his wives, and they're not there. And I really like there's a lot of, I feel like it was written in Mother's Milk too, but I don't know or not. I like.
Yeah, are you talking about what the things that they?
They had written messages to him, like, you don't. I
got them written down.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because I sorry, not to cut you off, but so they have these messages to him, and it is, we are not things. Our babies will not become warlords, and then a question: who killed the world?
Yes.
All of those very interesting.
White, which is probably just paint, but it just made me think of Mother's Milk, which I think would be kind of pretty symbolic.
Yeah.
I don't know how you put that on a wall, but
I've never milked a wall. I'll be honest on that one.
I don't know. So
actually,
okay. So realizes they're not there. Okay, she's driving off course. And it has to do with that. He just knows. Mm-hmm. So he calls more war boys. Is that what it is? Did I already forget what it's called?
They're war boys.
Yeah. That to go chase after them. And to kind of reinforce the other guys, probably. Although they're not for sure that those guys aren't in on it yet. I would assume. But something that I found interesting. So, like, they do the sign, the war boys.
Oh, yeah. That, like, triangle kind of thing. So it's with like both a V8 hands.
For a car. So you can see it as, like, cars are like spiritual beings at this point, which you would definitely think from Mad Max 1.
Yeah.
And then also could be in reference to Valhalla.
Cool.
So both.
But this is when we're introduced to
Nicholas Hoult.
And we've already discussed like the body bag and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And how
so
Max is his
Tom
body
Hardy
bag.
is hung upside down as a body bag, and then his like. He's trying to convince another war boy, like, I'm fine, I can go. Obviously, he's
Nicholas
not.
Hoult is.
Yeah, Nicholas Hoult is trying to convince someone that he is well enough to go, which he obviously is not.
And he's, like, sick. And
yeah, I mean, he has cancer. So he does convince them to go, that he can go, though, because he's going to bring his body bag. And he explains, like, I have high octane, which is apparently in Mad Max's blood.
Yeah.
So...
And this is the second of the trilogy of Tom Hardy Masks movies, where most of his face is covered in the movie. Not most, but we have Dark Knight Rises, Bane, Mad Max Fury Road, and then he finishes off the trilogy with Dunkirk.
Oh, because he's a pilot.
His face is he has a mask on all the time.
Okay.
There might actually be one more too. It's pretty funny.
I'm not about to go rewatch everything he's done.
Well, okay.
Anyway, so probably one of the coolest things that they do in the movie is, so Nicholas Hoult is driving this car. There's a guy in the back of the car, and he has like spears that he's going to throw.
They have explosive
to him. But Tom Hardy, where would you think he would be? Maybe in the seat next to Nicholas Hoult. That would make sense. No. He is riding outside of the car, in front of the car, strapped to the front like a decoration.
With like poles behind him. And then they go and they
with the blood like the tube,
the tube connected to a chain, and then that's when they attack the war rig, and then the war rig goes into the storm,
and it's just so amazingly
it's and why even bother explaining it?
Well, even so,
you know what I mean.
Something that's important is before that Nicholas Hoult sees someone do this, but also like we see. Someone, one of the war boys, spray paint his mouth, and then he goes and like kills himself. But he kills him. It's like a kamikaze thing. Like he goes to kill himself to damage the warship to stop her. It doesn't work, obviously. Right. But like he sees that, and you can just such great acting because there's this look on his face of like he gets to do that thing. I am so proud of him and jealous and like honored
Yeah.
to be next to this person as he's killing himself. And so why would he spray paint his face? Question. So
Oh yeah, this thing that you were talking. Oh yeah, this is cool.
I was thinking like, well, he spray paint, like, first of all, why his mouth? I'm not totally sure about that, but like to me, it's like thinking of like huffing paint.
Mm-hmm.
So they're getting high, which increases their adrenaline, which would no second thoughts about killing yourself or to go do something crazy. It's so
Yeah.
you can have the adrenaline to do something crazy and not feel it.
Now, is that your theory, or did you read
That's
that?
my theory.
So you didn't read that?
No,
That's pretty cool.
That's my theory. The mouth part, I'm not like I just think it's chrome like a car, like they're
Yeah.
a machine.
So shiny, so chrome.
Yeah. So there's that too, but it's so interesting, and like I don't remember if they shout something. They have a lot of chants, but it's like they believe that they will go to Valhalla
Yeah.
after they do this thing that they do.
Yeah, and I think it's like a high honor. I mean, it's kind of like a suicide bomber kind of thing.
Isn't
where
that a kamikaze pilot?
Yeah. But I mean, similar.
Yeah.
But both. I was just thinking of that because that's like.
Oh, okay.
That's a little more religious, whereas kamikaze can sometimes just be more like military-ish, as far as I know.
Well, I remember when we were in Hawaii recently, and we were learning about kamikaze pilots,
Yeah.
and something I found interesting was a lot of them were only like young men, like 19-year-olds, who were told that you will be like, it will be one of the highest honors that you can do for the like Imperial Army, because well, we don't have to get into Japanese culture too much, but like you will be like remembered almost like a god
Right.
for doing it. So in a way, I feel like it was a little bit of brainwashing.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to the movie. So Nicholas Hoult sees someone do that, and
then he's going to
character
make his
development.
move, and he does it for the first time.
Yes.
And I don't remember what he does, but he fails.
Yeah.
And the car crashes.
Yes.
And that's in the storm. And there was one thing I wanted to say about the storm. We discussed this as we were watching it, that the storm looks really good. And it's like mostly the cars and the stunts are not CG'd. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think there's a little bit of that
Yeah.
at certain points
For the
when they're
colors
like
and-
going up into the tornado and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
But the storm actually looks so good, and you kind of wonder why. But I think it's because the rest of the world is so stylized that it blends pretty seamlessly.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're watching a movie that's like, say if that same storm was in The Road,
yeah,
where that movie's like bleak and really realistic and gritty,
Yeah.
it would look so jarring and weird. But in this movie, it's just like another aesthetic choice.
and I think since it was also quick, you don't have enough time. I don't mean like the whole scene. I just mean
Yeah.
shots. You didn't have enough time to concentrate on probably the CGI elements.
right,
of it.
right.
But
But I was kind of looking for it this time, and I'm like, this looks so good.
Yeah.
It's crazy how good it looks. And
there's
even
lightning.
yeah, and I think since they didn't, and it probably helps that since they didn't spend their budget on CGI that much,
Mm-hmm.
they were probably able to spend more time on that one scene that has a lot of CGI
Oh,
than
yeah.
like
Than the
say-
rest of the movie.
Yeah, than like a movie where you have like a CGI character and you have to just like make that character the whole movie CGI.
Yeah.
This was like, oh, we have one high CGI scene. The rest is like putting a backdrop in the background.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep.
You know, so
Yeah.
yeah. Oh,
So-
and deleting a lot of ropes. You
Yeah.
know, because
Right, right.
if you could see the original footage, I'm sure there's just like ropes and wires
Everywhere.
and safety stuff like all over the place, and of course they have to delete all that, but
Well, yeah.
that doesn't really.
But
count.
so what happens is like Nicholas Hoult crashes the car. Meanwhile, he is trying to fight Tom Hardy just off of him because Tom Hardy gets back
Yeah.
to where he's driving. Oh yeah, because he's filling the car up with gasoline.
Yeah, because he's gonna hit the war rig
And
and blow
explode.
up, and he lights a flare.
Oh, and he wasn't able to release the flare because of Max.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, they crash. Sandstorm over. The crash is so crazy that you're like, how did they not die?
Uh-huh.
But Tom
Mad
Hardy
Max
wakes
is
up, or Max
immortal,
wakes up,
and
yeah. So he, yeah, and
and the funny thing that his acting choices in that scene where he wakes up are so insane.
I know he grunts a lot in this movie. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, he just grunts and kind of mumbles and stuff like that. But he he's covered in sand, and he like pops out of the sand really quick, and he's curling his fingers in a weird way and stuff.
Oh yeah,
and it's very animal like.
Yeah,
which I think at first I was thinking he was just kind of doing an interesting acting choice, but the movie's trying to talk about like the idea of humanity surviving in a world where all you have left is to survive. So I think they were actually intentionally like playing upon the idea of like the differences between an animal and a human in that scene.
Yeah.
Because it's just really interesting the way that he cuts that.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, the way that he reacts to that situation.
Yeah, it's super cool. So then after that, he's going... The war rig isn't that far away from him.
Yeah.
And he's still connected to Nicholas Hoult because of the chain, but he's able to get like the tube out of him.
Yeah.
But he's still stuck to him, and Nicholas Hoult is seemingly dead. So he has to drag him and a car door all the way to the
Yeah.
rig. And he tries shooting his hand off, but the gun doesn't fire. But he still uses the gun as like a threat when he goes to Charlize Theron.
Yeah, and then this is when we discover that... I mean, we knew this, but this is when Max sees that like the cargo of this war tank is these women that have been rescued by
and they're all in
Furiosa.
white, which is just such an obvious great choice. I
Yeah.
think one of them's super pregnant, one of them is pregnant, that blonde girl
Yeah.
was pregnant, but like one of them is like she is about to have a baby pregnant, and then all the other ones are like they're just all his wives.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Charlize Theron is trying to get the truck back running, and then he shows up.
Yeah, and you know, they have like a fight, and then they kind of like they eventually get on the road.
Yeah, everyone's because of the guitar happening.
Yeah,
you can
you
hear
hear
in the
that
background,
harbinger,
so you
and
know
they're
they're
like, "We got to
approaching."
get going."
Right. So he gets unchained from Nicholas Hoult. He convinces them to let him go with them. Or yeah, he
tries to steal the rig.
That's what it is. She convinces
She has
him.
like a kill switch that has to do a certain thing. So she's like, "Come with us," and he's like, "I'll only take you." And she goes, "The girls have to come with me."
Yes.
And he eventually agrees, but he's still like at gunpoint, like holding them.
And he shoots the pregnant one, but like nicks her leg.
Yeah, nicks her leg.
I don't know why I said that. I just thought that was interesting that
Yeah.
that happened. Yeah, so then they start going, and it's right before they get to these mountains or like a valley, and she's like, "I was told I would have safe passage."
Yeah.
So we get, and then it's just like, another action scene's about to come up.
Yeah, and then we transition to it's like these motorcycle guys, and they, you know, of course it doesn't go well, and you know Max has to like start driving the rig, and Charlize Theron like jumps on the rig. Things aren't going well. Meanwhile, Nicholas Hoult is hiding in the back, and they take off, and then they're doing these insane stunts where these motorcycle guys are
Jumping over the valley.
over the valley, like over the
Throwing
semi,
bombs.
and throwing bombs down, and you can like it's real.
Yeah.
And then there's that one where a guy jumps and and misses or something like that, and he slides under the semi, and you just
But he does it on purpose to get Charlize Theron because she's about to climb in.
Oh, that's right. And
So he
you
hits
just
the mark.
can't believe it.
Yeah.
You just can't believe it when you're watching it. It's so
This is a movie you
unbelievable.
got to see it to believe it.
Yeah.
Probably if you haven't seen it, you're not believing this guitar guy, but he's the best part.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then Immortan Joe catches up to them.
Yeah.
But the motorcycle people like have a bomb explode, so there's rocks prohibiting all of them from getting through the valley. But Immortan Joe is able to get over it because of his big Hot Wheels,
big monster
wheels.
truck. Oh, and actually Holt was with them because
Yes.
So they left him where we found the girl. This is a little confusing. We're getting
I know.
we're getting.
But he
bad
got a
at the
piece of their
plot.
clothing to
Yeah.
prove that they're there.
Yeah.
And that's why he allows them to go with him.
And then when they get there, then when Immortan Joe catches up, Nicholas what's cool is Immortan Joe like spray paints his face and he says, "I will meet you in Valhalla myself."
Yeah.
Because he's like a god to him.
Yeah.
Which it's just interesting because throughout this movie, Nicholas Hoult kind of has this. He's like basically he's a part of a cult, and by the
Yeah.
end of the movie, he realizes he's in a cult and like breaks free from it.
Yeah, it's his character development is just so beautiful to me.
Yeah, because that's like his god like told him to do it, and he fails.
Feels
at
like immediately
infiltrating the semi, and Immortan Joe immediately is just like he says mediocre and just keeps driving and doesn't care.
Yeah.
And that's
And
when
he
his
fails,
perspective starts to change.
and he fails in such a childish way because he still has the chain connected to him, and it just gets caught on the truck and he falls. Like, that's it.
That's right. Yeah.
So it's just so simple, and you feel so bad for him because the one thing he wants to do is to make this person proud of him, and to remember him, and he fails immediately.
Yeah, and then you have that shot where Joe like puts his gun out the window, and then his wife, his favorite wife, opens the
super
door,
pregnant one,
and she opens the door and she's blocking it because he's not going to shoot her, and that is just so cool. It's man, she's awesome when she does that.
Yeah, she's so great. So then action, super great action,
and then she falls off of the car.
She falls off and he runs over her.
Yeah, by accident.
But yeah. And then they keep moving the war rig, even though like the wives are like freaking out because it's like we need to go back and get her. And that really great thing where Charlize is asking Max like, "Did you see it?" And he's like, "She went under the wheels." And then she just asked it again, and he looks at her. And he's like, "She went under the wheels."
Yeah, and they're saying we need to go back and all that stuff. And then Furiosa just goes, "Keep going. We have to keep going."
Yeah, it's so wonderful. So then like eventually they do get to a point where they can stop for a second, and one of the girls is trying to run back because we were talking about how this is interesting, like it's about abuse. So like one of the girls is like, "He'll forgive us, he'll think it was a mistake, like we just need to go back to him," to Immortan Joe, and they're like trying to stop her.
Yeah, and this is where I think, I mean, it's a very obvious feminist message. And I think for one, it's super cool that the women are saved by a woman, Furiosa, and Max helps, but that's not the point, I guess. But in this part, you see that idea of like, you can imagine a woman who's been in a really abusive relationship who tries to get away, and then she like regresses back. And I'm not throwing judgment at that. I realize those are hard situations to be in. And then she's like, "Well, I can go back. It'll all be okay."
And they're like, convinced her like, "No, you will die if you go back."
Yeah. And so I mean, how wild is it that in 2015, even before like the height of like the Me Too movement, and I know that feminism obviously has been a huge like cultural impact for years, but like the most feminist movie like is Mad Max Fury Road. You know what I mean? Like the message is it's so clear, and it's also doled out in such a way that like even if you are really against those sort of things, you're still going to get that message stuck in your head whether you liked it or not, because there's no way you're not going to like the movie.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's actually like
That's
pretty cool. I like that way of preaching that kind of a message, because it's really, I think it's a really powerful message.
Yeah.
And it's but it's not at an expense of the story. The story's still really strong.
Well, that's
the movie's still really strong.
A lot of which I think a lot of people like would argue is like why they don't like action movies is because there's no story. Which I get. It's easy to lose the story in an action movie because the action's so exciting.
Yeah.
But that's what makes Mission Impossible so exciting. Oh. That's what's making John Wick so exciting. When John Wick is one of the most simple, the first movie, the most simple stories. His wife dies of an illness. She gives him a dog. They kill the dog. And he goes after all the people who
don't kill the dog. You just don't.
And it's so clear. I mean, like, it's like they had killed his wife for a second time.
Yeah.
That's the movie.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful. And it's about loss and tragedy and grief.
Like there's more to it than just the simplicity, but the beauty is the simplicity.
Yeah. Can't wait to do John Wick.
I know. And it's so cool as well. I think I said this in previous episodes, but not this one. This movie is like Mad Max I'm talking about. It's like it's like George Miller. I'm not saying he did this, but it's like he watched Road Warrior again, Mad Max 2.
Yeah.
And watched the last like 20 minutes and just said, what if the whole movie was this 20 minutes?
Yeah.
And also, what if it was never boring? Because sometimes when you have that much action, as much action as there is in this movie, you would think that you would eventually be like, oh my gosh, this is so boring. But it never, ever is.
And a big part of it is what you're looking at, actually happened.
Yeah.
People,
that's
like
why
so
we
many
love
people
the
risk
Mission
their
Impossible.
lives. I can't wait to do Mission Impossible.
I mean, when you're
Tom,
watching
we're coming
Fallout,
for you.
when you're watching Fallout and you see him jumping over a building and you know he did it, it's a lot more interesting than watching Skyscraper with Dwayne The Rock Johnson, where he's like climbing up a fake building.
Yeah.
And it's all just fake.
Yeah.
It's just not that interesting.
Yeah.
Because anyone can do it.
Yep.
But knowing that Tom, like put in the work, broke his ankle, all that. I mean, believe me,
this is a big pro Tom podcast. You guys might hate it by the time we get to Mission Impossible, but we know you'll love it.
Yeah, we love taking cruises. Let me tell you that much.
But let's get back into this movie, which is just so exciting as well. So the whole time, the reason why Charlize and these wives are leaving is because she's taking him to the green place, and they keep talking about the green place. The green place is where Charlize Theron is from, and she was taken from as a child. So she hasn't been there since a child. So she's going with this hope, and the movie is about hope.
Yeah.
But also about like false hope and even faith. So like they just are pushing on to the green place. So the next segment is they get to this like marshy, like almost quicksandy area.
There are these people that are on stilts
but
that walk through the marsh
on all fours.
Birds.
Crows especially.
And there's crows, but like a heron or something like would walk through it.
Yeah.
That's how they
I understand what you're saying. But
I'm like, where's their movie? Where's the marsh people's movie?
But I don't want a movie. It's so exciting that's all we got of it.
It is.
Yeah, so we're in this marshy area with dead trees, and the war rig gets stuck in a mud pit really quickly, and then as all the bad guys catch up to them, they get stuck too.
Mm-hmm.
And this is like it's a pretty good like a tiny bit of like a horror thing, because it's like you see the problem, you're seeing them trying to fix the problem, and they can't fix the problem, and the bad guys are right on their backs, and there's just so much tension.
And you're hearing
and it's getting louder and louder and louder.
Yeah.
And so by this time they find Nicholas Hoult had been hiding in the truck. And so when they stop, it's like one of the wives had found him and is like, basically he's good, he's fine.
Yeah,
he'll
he's
help us.
helping. He was like in the fetal position, like crying about what had happened.
Yeah. So yeah, he's helping them. They're just trying to get the truck out of the mud. And so as the bad guys catch up to them and get stuck, there's one car that is on, what is that called?
It's on patrol. It's got like a light out front that it's trying to find them.
No, but like it's like a tank.
Oh yeah, it has the chains that go all the way around.
So he's able to go. But what the crazy thing about this dude, don't know anything about him, have just now seen him. He's got bullets on his hat. Like his hat is like made out of bullets. He's got like a bullet scarf. He's got bullets everywhere. He pulls out a tooth, but it's not a tooth, it's a bullet. He has bullets for teeth, and it's so cool. And like all the guys, he's got a lot of guys on his car too.
Yeah.
So yeah, they have the beam, like the big spotlight.
And then Furiosa shoots it. It hits him in the eye.
But he's like doing this really interesting speech. Do you
I
remember?
don't remember that.
Oh, he was just like shouting things. I don't remember exactly what he was saying, but it was almost just like he was very confident that he was going to get the job done.
Yeah.
And then she shoots through the light and blinds him.
And then they hold up a flare right in front of his eyes, and he can't see it, and he's like screaming about it. It's crazy.
It's so cool.
And another thing about this movie, because now it's dark in this scene. Another reason this movie works, and if you're about to make an action movie, take note of this. There's enough aesthetic changes in the movies and objective changes in the movies to sustain the action.
Yeah.
So like each time they're at a different area, it's yes, it's one big long chase scene, but it's like before they were just trying to get away.
And this is all outside in a desert.
Yeah, and then they got to the cliffs, and then they were like trying to get past these people. Now they're stuck in the mud. They're trying to get out of the mud. Then eventually they get to the green place, and it's not green anymore, and then they have to go back. Enough objective changes. Now, beyond all that, it's like each location has a distinct look and a distinct aesthetic so that we as a viewer are not bored.
You know what? You know how like when we did the first phase of Marvel, and there were sometimes we had a hard time recalling parts of the story? This movie is so easy to recall because of the visuals.
Is, yeah. It really is.
It's too late for Marvel to take notes on that, but
yeah.
I mean,
I think we did a decent job on phase 1.
Oh, I meant it's too late for Marvel to go back on Marvel.
Oh, yeah.
But
also, real quick side note. I keep thinking about Phase 1. We did our rankings, and of course this will all change. But I know we had Iron Man 2 as our favorite.
You're doing Captain America as number
Captain
one?
America: The First Avenger is the best of Phase 1.
Oh,
I'm going to stand
so.
especially after seeing Endgame and like the whole payoff and everything. I think it's the best one.
Great payoff. That movie doesn't have Sam Rockwell in it.
It doesn't have Sam Rockwell, and we do have to docket points for that. But I think it's a better movie, I think, and I think I like it more. Just, it's sitting so well, and I just keep thinking about it, and I'm like, that's a really good movie. That's a good song, or whatever.
Yeah.
Comedy
Is anyone
Bang
still
Bang.
listening to this?
So now we're at the Green Place.
Wait. Hold on.
Okay.
We missed something. Oh, yeah, in the Marsh place, Max goes and leaves to go take care of the rest of the guys who are following them. We don't go with him. And
we just see an
Charlize
explosion.
is he's like, if I don't come back, whatever, like, just leave without me.
Yeah.
And then we see a red explosion, very quick like lightning, because it's all foggy. And then he just walks back with blood like all over his head, and they're like, "You're hurt," and Charlize is like, "That's not his blood."
Yeah.
And then they get in the car and go.
And that's like maybe I don't know if you'd agree with this, but maybe a little bit of a turning point where he like did something selfless.
Yeah.
Not selfless, because he's still motivated, but it's
It
like
was a sacrifice move.
it was
though.
a sacrificing move, and he was willing for them to just leave without him.
Yeah.
But then we get to the Green Place. Mm-hmm. It's not green anymore,
It's all just dunes.
and it's all these older women, a couple of younger ones, but no like teenagers or anything like that.
No
And
one
they're
as
like,
young as the wives, even close.
So Furiosa's just like distraught. The score comes back in, it kills you, and then Mad Max says, "We gotta go back." And he decides to go straight back into him because they're not going to expect it. And so they just drive back through it.
What's interesting about that is before they're like, we're gonna go across the salt flats. It'll take us 160 days. Like, we have enough fuel for 160 days to do it. And he's telling her there's no point in having hope anymore, because that's all she's living off of now.
Yeah.
Is hope. And he's telling her stop. They go anyway, even though he had the opportunity to go. And then he goes and stops them and provides them hope
Yeah.
by giving them an actual solution that could work. Because it's like, yeah, you'll get out there in 160 days and you'll be in the same spot and you'll die, or you can go and fight
Yeah.
to live. When this would just kind of almost be like giving up in a way, you know?
Yeah.
Because it's like a false hope. So yeah, so then they turn back around. Sorry.
And then they head straight back for a Morton Joe in the old city that they lived in. Mm-hmm. And they do one final stand. And the action sequences are insane. Every second of it is like
Exciting.
it's just crazy. It's so awesome.
And it's not hard to follow.
No.
You know who's where at what time because of all the stuff we had talked about earlier.
Yeah. And then how does a Morton Joe die? Oh, they like blow. This is cool. They do the big chase. And then Nicholas Holt is finally able to make a sacrifice, and he's on the
war rig.
The war rig while they're getting away on another vehicle. I think Max's vehicle, right? Because
it's a Morton Joe's.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then he like drives it into these boulders, and it like blocks the path. So he is able to like kamikaze, for lack of a better term, but for the right people this time. So he attempts it twice. He accomplishes it the third time, but for the good guys, which is pretty cool.
Oh yeah, it's beautiful. And then there's throughout the movie he falls in love with. I'm assuming they fell in love because they seem very affectionate in that way towards each other.
The redheaded girl.
Yeah, so he falls in love with them. She's looking like they're looking at each other as he's about to die, and he says, "Wait for me," which is just a beautiful. Like, I'm assuming he's meaning like Valhalla still, but like a different version that he didn't think existed.
Yeah.
But now he's found peace.
Yeah.
So beautiful. Like, probably the most emotional I got in the movie.
That's cool.
But yeah, so then how does a Morton Joe die?
Well, doesn't he just crash and...
No, because they take his car. Remember, he has that breathing apparatus on his head?
Oh my gosh, and the chain gets stuck in the car and it rips his face off.
Rips off the bottom of his face.
I forgot about that.
That's how he dies.
Yeah, and that's when he dies, and then the rest of his crew's a little confused at what to do. Yes. There's a guy with a chainsaw throwing it down. I'm just going to throw these words out at you, and if you haven't seen the movie, person, you just got to see it to believe it.
Yeah. Wait, what words?
Those were the words. I guess that doesn't make sense. I mean, there's a chainsaw, there's chases, there's explosions.
There's a guy with a guitar with flame shooting out of it.
Yeah, we've discussed that one. And Max does fight the guy with the guitar, and they're like swinging the guitar around, which is crazy.
And then you see that the guitar guy doesn't have eyes.
Oh yeah, he has like no
not
face.
even. It's like he definitely was not born with them.
I forgot about that.
Anyway, we can stop talking about
He kind of
him.
looks like look up Little Nightmares, the blind guy.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
what he looks like.
Yeah. Arms are a little bit shorter.
Yeah.
But yeah, so his face gets ripped off. And throughout this entire action sequence, Charlize gets stabbed, like, in her side.
Yeah.
Like, getting vital organs. So, like, she's inches from death by the end of this. And Max, like, one of her lungs is collapsing. He opens one of her lungs. And then him being a universal donor gives her his blood.
Yeah.
And then they make it back to the place.
Yeah, and the town, they basically challenge them. They throw down the dead body of Morton Joe.
People start ripping it apart.
Yeah. And then the guy who's kind of running the town while he's gone is pretty much just pressured into making Furiosa the leader. Mm-hmm. And then Max just fades into the background, as he does at the end of all of them.
Wonderful. And they let the water fall, like...
Yeah, they let the people have the water. And throughout the movie, Furiosa asked him earlier what his name was, and finally, when he transfuses the blood, he says, "My name's Max." And so it's like to me, it feels like he finally accepts who he is.
Yeah.
So now...
Or it also just embracing, because he's dealing with this PTSD the whole time, and the whole time it's this kid saying, like, Max, Max, Max.
Yeah.
And I think he's trying to reject his identity and who he is and what he's done, which to him, he probably feels a little bit like a failure because of people who have died.
Yeah.
And he doesn't want to, even the sound of his name, or taking responsibility of his name, it's like he's responsible for those people's deaths, which isn't true.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So now we're almost at the end here, people. This is a long one. Hope you've enjoyed it and that you're going to comment and subscribe and rate. But we're going to do a little segment called Track the Arc. So our main character is Mad Max. He's in all 3 movies, and I've thoroughly discussed my mythology read of the whole movie. 4 movies. But good writing. Usually characters have nice character arcs, and especially over series, that's an important thing to have. Mm-hmm. So what is Mad Max, like, arc of the series, would you say? You're better at this than I am, and I'm kind of throwing this at you.
Like a moment in a movie that was, like, the peak of what...
Well, like, where did he start, and where did he go in each movie as a character?
Well, I mean, he started as a police officer in a lawless time... But trying to find some kind of semblance of the law, loses his family because of it, and then, like, rejects everything and just only, like, finds solace and solidarity just by himself. And then quickly, it's almost as if he's like a superhero. Responsibility is thrust upon him. Mm-hmm. And he tries everything he can to reject it, but every time he can't reject it, it is like a destiny thing.
Yeah.
Because it's just happened so many times. So... I just think that each movie he has tested, he's given this responsibility and he has just tested, like, how far he's willing to go to sacrifice himself for others. And not even that, what's interesting is he's never shown to be a selfish person, especially in a post-apocalyptic world. You could even argue, like, you have to be selfish to survive.
Yeah.
But he's showing that you don't have to be.
Yeah. So that's your take. That's pretty good. It's kind of interesting because I don't actually see a lot of growth in his character, and I would think that would make the series not work that well, but it works really well.
I think he grows the most in this movie.
Yeah, I think like, should they make a sequel, I think he will look a little different.
Yeah,
and he does a little bit in each movie, but he seems to be fueled by survival. That's his baser instinct. So that's that. We'll be covering that more in more series. Then I do have a little bit more. We're almost done here, people. The movie won 6 Oscars. Film editing, costume design, makeup and hair, sound mixing, sound editing, production design. Deserves every single one of them. It was nominated for directing.
Wait, was that nominated for how many?
It was nominated for 10.
And it won 6?
Yeah, so it was nominated for directing, cinematography, visual effects, and Best Picture as well, which is so cool that this movie was nominated for Best Picture. And looking back on the year, even though this was a great year for film, 2015, you got The Hateful Eight, you got Spotlight,
Revenant.
I think this is the best picture. I think when you look back, the best achievement in film, I'm glad Spotlight won, like you and I discussed off air, because of what it means for journalism. But this is the better movie.
Yeah.
So then, I just got to hit this as well. There've been many rumors of sequels. Miller and McCarthy, the two writers, well, two of the three, said they had enough material to make 2 more movies. And what was going to be the next movie, Mad Max Furiosa, had already been completed, the script. And then they changed the title to The Wasteland, Mad Max The Wasteland. And then they said that was a working title. But right now, George Miller is suing Warner Brothers over unpaid earnings. So this involves a $7 million bonus if the movie is brought in under budget, and he claims that Warner Brothers calculated the budget wrong.
Oh.
So that's why we don't have a movie right now.
Oh, that sucks, man.
It's only been 4 years, though, and the last time it was a 30-year wait, so who knows?
That just still sucks that he has to go through that.
Yeah, it does suck. It sucks. But then, since the series is still ongoing, we got to hit with our own takes. We love this series. Sequel ideas. Do you have any thoughts?
No.
Okay, because I have a small pitch of something that I would like to see in the sequel. And it just involves... the movie starts with Furiosa. She's doing her thing. It's all cool. I don't know what the thing... I can't think of like the inciting incident or what's going on. But she, for some reason, needs Mac's help. And they spend like a good half of the movie trying to find Max. But he's like not in the first half of the movie.
Okay.
And then he's nearly dead, and she winds up saving him. I like that idea.
That's interesting.
And then I did just write this. It'd be cool if there was somehow involved an abandoned subway or boats.
Ooh.
Because we've had no boats in the series, because there's not really water or anything. But it would be cool if there was some weird, like, septic area or somewhere gross, and they had, like, all these boats. And I would just love to see George Miller direct a boat action sequence with a lot of bombs and explosions on the water, a la Face Off.
Oh, yeah.
But George Miller style.
I guess I don't have an idea, but I would not want to see Charlize Theron in the next one.
Really?
Because there are like no recurring characters in any of the movies. It's always new things. It's almost as if like the next one should be he has traveled to a new place and it's new circumstances. That's what it's been every time. And that's one thing I like about it so much is every time you're learning a little bit more about this world, but also you get to know these new characters, and none of them have been the same. It's always been so different from the last one.
That's interesting.
I mean, I wouldn't be like against Charlize Theron being in the next one, but it's like it's Mad Max, it's not Furiosa. Which
I guess you're right. That's a good point. I think I agree. I think I maybe just had that in my head because they already said they were like originally when they did it, they were like everyone's really connecting with Furiosa. We have more stories to tell that involve her.
And I'm sure they're great, but it's just like I think the world building is so great and so like deep, yet they don't show us everything.
Yeah.
That to show us more of that world, I think I'd be a little bummed about it.
Okay.
Because I think it would be a little bit forced. That's why I think that.
Unless they do it really
Unless
well.
they do it, which it seems as though he's not like pressured into making a new one, obviously. So
yeah, he's not.
He has time to think about it.
Well, this was awesome.
What's the ranking?
Oh, the ranking. Yes. So for me, my least favorite is Beyond Thunderdome. My third favorite is 4 Beyond Thunderdome, 3 Mad Max, 2 Mad Max 2, and 1 Mad Max Fury Road.
Are we ever going to disagree on the rankings?
I think that our next series we will.
Well, I guess we'd already disagreed about Marvel. since you changed yours.
Yeah, I did change mine. But
my
so yours is the same.
Same rankings. Same.
So anyway, next week we're diving back into the conglomerate that is the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and we're going to be diving into Shane Black's Iron Man 3. And so we're going to be covering Phase 2, which spans from Iron Man 3 up to, I believe, Captain America Civil War, I think is the last one in Phase 3.
No Guardians in that time.
Oh yeah, this is when Guardians comes in. Guardians, which is going to be good.
That's going to be just as long as this one.
So thanks for listening, everybody. Stay mad.